What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's episode 91. Episode 91. Wow, that's crazy. Well, this is John. I'm John, and I do stuff, and then I talk about it, which is why my show's called Jon Does. And today is another one of those 90s nostalgia episodes. I hope you're all ready. Hope you're all ready for it, because we've got some good stuff. What do we have today? Well, I have Ryan on the phone. Ryan, what's going on? How you doing?
So far, so good, John B.
Oh, you know what? I forgot real quick. I'm sorry. I even said this right before we went on. Don't forget to go to wilddinosaur.com to support this channel. If you like what we do here, go buy some merch from my merch store on my website, wilddinosaur.com. Some cool stuff there. So check it out. Anyways, Ryan, how was your Wednesday? What are you up to?
Grabbed some groceries, man.
Nice.
Grabbed some groceries.
Essential. It's not.
And that would be about it, I suppose.
It's not still raining up there, is it?
You know, we were promised a thunderstorm, and still waiting on that.
Well, at least you're dry. I was not promised any more thunderstorms or anything down here, and I'm actually kind of disappointed. I know certain parts of California are dealing with the rain in not great ways, but I could do for more. I'll be honest. I would not mind a little bit more water down here. Anyways, so we're here talking about a new record, a brand new record, came out in the year of our Lord, 1990. August 21st, 1990. That's not far from your birthday.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Was this a birthday present for yourself? Did you go out and check out this record for your birthday? Which would be, by the way, Jane's Addiction's Ritual de la Habitual.
That is the record we're supposed to be talking about. Oddly enough, might not have been the day Jane's Addiction dropped, but a few days before my birthday, I was in the local Kmart, and I was, what was I buying? That can't be
an icy, probably. Kmart used to have some of the best icy machines in my neck of the woods. Anyways.
No. I think I'm confusing this with a later birthday. I couldn't tell you what I was doing around the time in 1990. I mean, that's what makes this record so difficult to talk about. Gosh, I mean, in the summer of 1990, I was on my way to the 8th grade.
I was gonna make the joke you were on so many drugs you couldn't remember that time frame, but 8th grade, yeah. So yeah, what were you
like? The music I was into at the time would have been, the classic rock that was in the home.
Mm-hmm. The old man stuff. The
parents, my mom.
And the parent, the parents.
I had a Sega Genesis, and every so often there'd be a soundtrack to a game that I really fell for,
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of synced up with a lot of the electronic and dance music I was hearing on the radio, which was probably more where my head was at. rock was in a bad place at the time. I think. I thought at the time, and still do. And probably after Jane's Addiction dropped, I would have started getting these mixtapes from, they were VHS mixtapes, I beg your pardon.
Mm.
And they were just hours and hours of MTV. Sometimes there were animations in there. Sometimes there were like snippets from Saturday Night Live or David Letterman or something like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was Headbangers Ball, 120 Minutes, Alternative Nation.
I remember those. I remember those shows well. Especially Headbangers
So what my
Ball.
friends and I were doing was copying this stuff and kind of making our own dubs and adding and subtracting.
Cassette tapes or VHS tapes or both?
VHS tapes.
Gotcha. See, kids, that's what we used to do back in the day, is if you liked a song on the radio or on TV, is you popped your cassette tape into the old VCR, or if you had, a stereo that had two tape players and one had a record button, you could make your own mixtapes off the old radio there. I used to do that off Radio Disney a bunch as a kid.
I can tell you when Jane's Addiction dropped, I had Weird Al, Dare to Be Stupid.
Great record.
Weird Al, Polka Party.
Also great record.
The Best of the Band, Meatloaf, Bad Outta Hell, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, and probably a couple dozen blank tapes that I had recorded stuff off the radio from, and two rather, and dub and other friends' tapes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But and this is something we've touched on before, man. But at that point, I had no real money to spend on much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky to get a Sega game for my birthday. Lucky to get one for Christmas. I had a little bit of an allowance, but that mostly went to comic books. And right around that time, I probably was taking a good crack at reading. Probably Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide. Maybe some Ian Fleming.
Mm-hmm. I love me some Douglas Adams.
Yeah. But there was just, gosh, man, I don't think I'd really ever hung out in a record store, a proper record store. That's not true. But I'd been into a record store or two at the mall. But I definitely wasn't hanging out at record stores yet.
Mm-hmm.
That was still a couple years away. I wouldn't have heard Been Caught Stealing on the radio at first. I would have heard it. I would have seen the video.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, 89X really took off. And a little after that, I started listening to more modern rock. And I guess it's worth saying that Christmas, after Jane's Addiction came out, my dad hit up a music store and he got The Rhythm of the Saints by Paul Simon for me, which I loved. I played the hell out of that tape. I've never stopped listening to that record. You got my sister Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, 1914.
Nice.
You got my mom, Bonnie Raitt,
Ooh.
Nick of Time, I believe it's called.
My mom, I think, also was very much into that at the time.
I was just a kid. I was picking up on Jane's Addiction the following year when I, went off to high school. The remarkable thing about Jane's Addiction, the reason I agreed to talk about it, I mean, for me, when we've had these discussions in the past, I was kind of on my way out of the home.
Yeah.
When this record hit, I was as much of a child as you were at the time, my good man.
Yes. I was like 6 years old, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Which I think when you say that, you're, it's not like there's a little bit of an age gap, but we were still of a mentality. We were not exploring the world. We weren't, out there like absorbing all the media and, finding our favorite records. We're still like discovering some of that stuff and what that means to us. So I totally hear you on that. But hey, so let's ask the question real quick. Who is Jane's Addiction for people who might not know? I have a quick answer. They're 4-piece. Lead singer Perry Farrell, guitarist Dave Navarro. Who was it? Eric Avery, was that the bass player? Yes.
Correct.
And then Stephen Perkins on drums. And they did, 3 records total. I think they have about 3 records in their whole discography. Let me look that up real quick. I'm there. I'm
There's more Jane's Addiction, man, and I have ignored it.
Okay.
And there's more Jane's Addiction coming.
Okay. So there was Nothing Shocking, which originally you and I both voted to do that record, but it didn't come out in the 90s. It came out in 88. Then Ritual in 90, Strays in 2003, This Great Escape Artist in 2011, and then there's one coming this year. So there's like huge gaps of time between records. But yeah, so that's the basis of or the culmination of these 4 people. It's Jane's Addiction. You and I had briefly talked about what those individuals, how we viewed them. We talked about that the other day, and I was under the impression growing up, because I had heard, Perry Farrell's name associated with things like veganism and environmental, being pro-environmentalist, and also I guess when we were talking the other day, I thought he was more involved with the Tibetan Freedom Concert, but yeah, I think that was the Beastie Boys. But he was the original planner, organizer, founder, I guess, of Lollapalooza.
It was meant to be Jane's Addiction's farewell tour.
That's how it started. That's interesting. I did not know that.
See, that's his influence over my 90s experience was impressive, man, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Those Lollapaloozas, I tried to catch as many as I could. I think 97 was their last one. They might have started it up again later, but yeah.
So, doing a little bit of research over the course of this last week, you and I talking about this record and doing a little bit of homework, I did understand, I read that the original breakup was over drug use, and 2 of the members were users and 2 of the members were not users, as far as I understand it. And the way I always interpreted it, because I didn't know anything about it because I was young and I just didn't really do, my research into this band so much on the back end of things. I would have assumed, based on how I've seen, Dave Navarro and Perry Farrell are the two people from the band that I have been aware of since the 90's. So, to me, they were as, not iconic's not the word, but recognizable as like Anthony Kiedis and Flea.
Sure.
To me. And I had assumed maybe, when I did learn about the breakup, that the drug usage would have been on the Dave Navarro end. I don't know why I assumed that. I think maybe it's just like seeing him shirtless with like chain necklaces and leather pants all the time just made me assume like, oh yeah, he probably does heroin. Something like that. But it was actually the opposite. It was Dave Navarro and one of the other members. I don't know which one. I think it was maybe the drummer. I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, I had assumed that was the case, and my image of Perry Farrell has changed after doing this because, I hate to put it this way. I really hate to express this in this terms, but I always kind of saw Perry Farrell as like a Bono in a way. Like Bono has this whole persona of like, he crucifies himself on stage every night that he plays. He holds his arms out like he's Jesus on a cross and stuff like that. But he also does all this like philanthropic I can't say that word. Philanthropic, thank you. He does all of this like charity work and stuff like that too. And I kind of always in my head put Perry Farrell kind of on that level, even though I've always liked his music maybe a little bit more, or stuff that he's been involved with a little bit more than you two. But yeah, my opinion has slightly changed because of, not that I've like turned on Perry Farrell, but I, knowing the truth about like, yeah, he was the guy with the drug problem in the band for a while, or one of the two.
Not to get into too far into who was shooting what,
sure.
But at least in Farrell and Navarro's case, they were, oh gosh, man, I think both of them lost parents to, homicide. There's some legit trauma going back a ways, going into that band. And I know both Navarro at least has spoken at length about his battles with substance abuse and his constant struggle to stay sane and soberish, As far as, I don't know, man. I have not dug too far into the dirt with this band. I think drugs were probably a problem at some point with all of them. I kind of get that impression.
Yeah. And
maybe not the drummer. I'll bet you the drummer is the soberest one out of the lot.
So real quick, I have the wiki up here, and it said difference between the members on the issues of drug use on the Ritual tour led to a schism. Farrell and Perkins, the drummer, regularly partook, while Avery and Navarro abstained, according to Spin in 1991.
See, and I'll buy that for the Ritual tour, but there's 6 years of history.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And I think Navarro at one point said he was trying to get away from that act for the sake of getting clean.
Yeah.
It's the thing. Don't do drugs, kids.
Don't do drugs.
The band came off as hedonistic. I
Yes.
understood that from the beginning.
Yes, I did too, very much.
Their lead single, that video, was... I thought it was funny because it was so blatantly antisocial.
Yeah. Are you talking about Been Caught Stealing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You might take that as encouragement to shoplift, I guess. I suppose I don't want to accuse him of advocating for anything. That is Perry Farrell. I don't want to accuse him of encouraging children to shoplift.
Oh, I'm sure there was plenty of parents in the 90s that had that conversation. I'm surprised it didn't make it to Congress, you know. Back in the days, there was a lot of parents that were I mean, this was just past the parental advisory thing. That was a couple years before. Is that right? That was like...
No, it would have been that year.
It was 90. Oh, okay. For some reason, I was thinking it was like 88, 87, 88. But yeah, no, that was the whole Tipper Gore stuff, right?
So, yeah, I mean, and that had started so ridiculous. I mean, when that... I don't remember exactly when it started. Other than Tipper Gore didn't like what she heard on Prince's Purple Rain. Which, okay. So some time passes, and yeah, summer of 1990, I guess, that became a new feature. They were always kind of like in the same place. They were like in the lower right. And I'm pretty sure Two Live Crew was the first. Nasty as They Wanna Be would have been the first. And that I had actually heard. I heard Two Live Crew's Nasty as They Wanna Be when it dropped. No one was home. My buddy Seth brought it over, and I was so afraid of like the neighbors hearing it. Like I had the volume on super low. I had the windows closed. And the guy was just filthy, but it wasn't that good. I could tell. It was almost as if they were trying to get somebody to slap a parental advisory on their album.
Yeah.
But there were other parental advisory albums that followed that I felt like I was breaking some kind of rule by listening to them, you know?
Yeah.
The good stuff was hip hop, and it was kind of easy for me to see why the feds, I guess, would want to prohibit kids from buying and listening to art that was so openly critical.
Especially that John Denver, man. Like, he was pretty risky.
Well, he came out against it.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, Frank Sinatra was there trying to put the brakes on it.
That's actually
it was a big deal.
That whole situation's a really interesting time for art in the 90s. Maybe that's, if you got time sometime, maybe that's an extracurricular episode of 90s nostalgia where we talk about that whole experience. That would be a pretty good one to break down. I think some of that stuff might be still kind of relevant.
Ritual's a great place to start, man.
Yeah.
Because the cover is an atrocity.
Yeah, I'll pull that up real quick.
On all levels. It's inexcusable.
There you go. I have it on screen.
I'm not personally offended by anything I see, but Walmart didn't want to, or it would have been Kmart at the time. It would have been big box retailers and this was the thing, they didn't want any objectionable material out there to the kids. Never mind they had every Stephen King book that was, on the New York Times or whatever.
Yeah. Cujo ate my face off again.
But, Cujo killed my other kid. That's how that one played out. That cover was controversial. But the preceding cover was controversial. Both Nothing Shocking and Ritual had covers that were given alternates by the label. Would have probably Atlantic, Warner Electro Atlantic, I think. They hadn't merged yet. It was Warner.
Yeah, it was Warner. I did a little digging on that earlier. And actually that answers a question, because I didn't even put this together. So I do listen to these records and stuff that we do our episodes on Spotify. That's where I listen to them. And the album cover was just white with a lot of text on it. And
that would be the First Amendment.
Okay. That's what it was. I didn't read it because it was super small and I just wasn't, looking at the album cover. But when I was doing the pulling up the graphic for this, I found this one and I was like, why are there two album covers? Yeah, no, that explains it right there. It did take me a second to find the actual album cover, not just the white paper with text.
See, when I started actually listening to Jane's Addiction, it wasn't, and when I say actually listening, it would have been within a year of it coming out. Other friends were picking these up. I appreciated Jane's Addiction, what I heard. I didn't buy into the aggression much. I was never much into aggressive music. Jane's Addiction was groovy, though. Jane's Addiction, there was a lot going on. I could respect that. The thing was, it was tough keeping what album you were listening to straight because of the confusion of the alternate covers.
Yeah.
And, that confusion for me lasted, well, after the turn of the century, man. Because sometimes you didn't even get artwork, is the thing there. I guess the other thing worth pointing out, I don't know, man. Jane's Addiction was recorded. Their live performances were recorded. Lots of them. And so there were Jane's Addiction bootlegs out there. There were VHS bootlegs of concerts. There were tapes, dubs of concerts, audio tapes of concerts. There was a lot of stuff. And it was hard to keep the chronology straight. And it didn't help that Ritual, for instance, they had been playing those songs for a while. They had been playing those songs while they were recording Nothing Shocking.
Mm-hmm.
They played a lot, man, and I knew nothing about it at the time, but yeah, their shows are legendary, and people from LA love them. People argue seriously that they're the greatest rock band out of LA ever, and at moments I'm inclined to agree. But I don't think it's not fair to compare Jane's Addiction to The Doors or even Van Halen. But that's kind of what I would have to do, you know,
Yeah.
in the fight over the best rock band out of LA ever.
I don't know, man. Harmar Superstar. I'm just kidding. Well, real quick. So let's, sorry, did I interrupt your point? I didn't mean to do that.
Confusing artwork.
Confusing
and you
artwork.
didn't really know when the tracks were recorded. So, like, getting a chronology on that band and, like, even really understanding what their discography was, it took some doing. You know, especially if you were just starting out, you know, on your quest as a music collector.
Well, let's touch on the mix real quick, because something stuck out to me when we were talking about these records, Jane's Addiction records, the other day. Was you had made the comment you like Nothing Shocking as a better record, but Ritual is mixed and engineered better.
I think I've got problems with the engineering on both.
Okay.
Both of them. My favorite Jane's Addiction record, which I didn't even know was a record, but is their first record. I personally think they just should have stuck to releasing live shows, man.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't care for the mix on either studio albums.
The last two episodes, you have just weaned Jane's Addiction. You have highly suggested mostly the live recordings of things. I gotta ask you real quick: are you a Deadhead?
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I have. It's been a while since I've seen any live music, man. But I do love a good show.
Yeah.
And there is an athletic dimension to music that I really appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the test of it right there. You know? How do you sound doing this live?
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Come on. Let's leave Nothing Shocking alone for a second. Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think the bass for Ritual is weak ass?
Ooh,
I've listened to it on a couple different headphones. I listened to it on some monitors. I listened to, you know.
Yeah, I think the one case I can say I don't think it's that weak on this record is probably Been Caught Stealing'. However, could it have come up a little?
Pretty strong on, of course.
Yeah, yes, it is. But I think across the record, could the bass have come up a little bit more volume wise? Probably.
See, I don't know, because we're talking about the mix here, and okay, I said I was going to listen to some Porno for Pyros.
I didn't get to it either.
I didn't. What I did do is I A&B'd Ritual with the 2006 remaster.
Okay.
And it's pretty much the same story across both. The bass drum is the lowest you got, and it's got a certain presence to it. It's got this blocky, dry presence. But that bass drum is important to the band. It's prominent in all their work. I'll give that to them. There's something, they're saying something there. The bass drum is the base of that band. What I disagree with is that the bass guitar has to share space with those damn toms. The guy's a great drummer. Perkins is a great drummer. But like the panned toms, stuff like that, man, they were all about the drum. I get it. But that bass. And he's prone to like do riffs and stuff like higher up on the neck. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, Navarro is got, we'll get to Navarro's sound in a minute, but his sound is huge. His sound is huge. And Perry Farrell is, I mean, it's all about Perry. They're calling it Jane's Addiction because he's too shy to call it Perry Farrell and Three Junkies, but that's what's up. You know, when you go in on a vocal fronted act, you're making a deal with the devil, and you better love that guy's voice because it's everywhere. And there's nothing more everywhere on a Jane's Addiction record. Even when the dude uses a lot of delay.
Yes.
Dude's voice occupies a lot of space. All of that taken together, you know, a P bass with the tone knob turned down, played on the fretboard, it's just going to make everything sound like garbage.
Yeah.
I understand why the bass has to sound the way it does. But I felt underwhelmed by the bass this time around.
I was, forgive me, I was just looking at touring members and past touring members. I didn't realize both Flea and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses were both past members of Jane's Addiction.
For a minute.
Touring guest Josh Klinghoffer. Are you familiar with Josh Klinghoffer? Do you know who that is?
Who's he associated with?
He toured. He was the replacement guitar player for John Frusciante in the most recent absence of John Frusciante in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I had heard of his band Dot Hacker, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. And there was a couple of tracks that I was into. But one of the other touring members, and this is listed as from 2022, I don't know. I think he's filling in for Dave Navarro, was Troy Van Leeuwen, who I have his Jazzmaster Pro Model guitar. I just wanted to throw that out there because I love that guitar so much. And yeah, whenever I see him involved with stuff, I'm like, I don't go to listen to the music. I just go and like look at my guitar for a little bit. I'm like, hey, how are you? Is it okay if I give you a hug today?
Avery was a good bassist.
Yes.
And Navarro is Navarro hasn't shown himself to be much of a songwriter.
No.
I think he is quite happy jumping onto what someone else is doing.
Sure. Third on a sick lead or something like that.
Well, that's what he does, man.
Yeah.
And I guess textures.
Yeah.
He's got some funk chops.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the... Shall we move it on over to David Navarro
Sure,
for a moment or two?
Let's go.
Because I really like his guitaring.
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't done much to stay in the game. I mean, he was in the Chili Peppers for a minute, and I guess that was all right. Actually, I like the song off that record. It's My Friend, isn't it?
I don't remember.
One Hot Minute.
Was that the era where they had Aeroplane?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that era a little bit. I haven't revisited that era, but
I'm not a huge Chili Peppers fan. I mean, this is the thing, man. As the 90s wore on, we're going to get to Dave Navarro in just one sec, but just to hammer this point home, Jane's Addiction had some staying power. And for, like, being a disbanded band, you know, people were still listening to them throughout the 90s and beyond. And I mean beyond, like, diehards who just can't get over adolescence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their music continued to speak to people. I think Dave Navarro's look, those first three Jane's Addictions records and whatever associated shows there might be, that's kind of it for me in that band. I thought Dave Navarro was great. I think he's got a respectable trick bag, and he can just kind of throw away leads, and they're pretty good.
Yeah, he's a really, really solid guitar player. And real quick, I was just looking up. Yeah, One Hot Minute was the era that he was around. He was in the band for about 4 years. And according to Wikipedia, in April 1998, the Chili Peppers announced that Navarro had left due to creative differences. Kiedis said that the decision was mutual. Reports at the time indicate that Navarro's departure came after he attended a band practice under the influence of drugs. So,
yeah,
he had his issues, but hey, I think we all have our issues.
Well, yeah, I don't want to dwell on anyone's habits or traumas.
Yeah, I guess I was just kind of going back to my previous comments about the dynamics of the band.
It came up with Ween.
Yeah.
Last time. Everyone was cool with everyone's dirty laundry in the 90s. And yeah, some obviously very sick people were paraded out in front of, you know, the media and audiences and so forth. I don't know how many interviews Perry Farrell had. Like, I don't remember them doing much press at all. And I imagine most of the time he would have been a mess.
Yeah, I imagine quite regularly. Wow, talking is a thing. So we got. I don't know if you want to go long today or not, but we have about 15 minutes left. I feel like there's stuff we could still get into. I do want to throw out real quick. Been Caught Stealing was my first introduction to them. It probably wasn't the day the video came out, but I would say somewhere 1990, 1991. This was back in the days when there was a network on television called Music Television, MTV for short, and they used to do something unimaginable. They used to play music videos on their network the majority of the day, and that's where I was really introduced to Jane's Addiction. And Been Caught Stealing was probably the first music video I ever really took notice of and was like, this is weird, and I really liked it. I didn't know really how to react about it, you know. And I was a kid. I was young, so you know, a song about getting caught stealing, like it reminded me of, like, you know, a couple of years prior when I didn't know better and I grabbed some like gum off the shelf at a store and walked out, and they yelled at me, and I was like, what? I don't understand what the problem is. I wanted gum, so I took it. So that was, you know, that was my mentality. But that if that video comes on, I will watch it. If it comes on. What am I talking about? We're in an age where, like, you have to go look stuff up now. So if I wanted to go listen to it, I would go listen to it. But there was a time when music videos would just come on and you'd be like, oh, cool. So you'd stop and listen to it. And that was one of them. So I do think it's probably pretty formative for me and my tastes at that. Where was I? Oh, some stuff. How do you feel about this record as a whole, like song wise? Is this something that you are gonna go back and listen to again? Or
the last time I listened to it before this was in 2010.
Okay.
Or thereabouts. I brought a fat stack of wax home from work. And at the top was Ritual. I put it on upside down. The B-side kicks off. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. Not into the aggression. I wasn't when it was hot. I wasn't when it was old, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that B-side, I do like that B-side. I think it's overproduced. I think it's tacky.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, that's okay. They were going for that. I don't think the string section was necessary. I don't think the piano was necessary. I think the violin is lame. I think they could have, I think the violin is underwhelming.
I mean,
none of the bells and whistles to that B-side impressed me.
You have all of our orchestra listeners out there who play violin or love violin. We're going to get a lot of hate mail. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
They're a quartet.
Yeah.
And I would rather have them have stretched out on that B-side. Just them.
Yeah.
You know? Navarro's comfortable doing overdubs.
Yeah.
All right? So why not? You know? You lazy junkie. Honestly, again, the first record, Jane's Addiction, self-titled. It's got Perry Farrell on it's the most honest cover they've got. It's just Perry Farrell. My favorite track on Ritual is probably Obvious, which is on the A side. And it's got everything I like about Navarro there. It's got huge riffs, spacious playing. The band is doing good. You know, their bass might not have the presence I'd prefer, but they groove. They're grooving to the max.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's so nice about Ritual and so nice about the whole act, man. This applies to all their albums. It's like that Bill Laswell review I was referring to. The real shit. This had everything, man. You know, it was obvious listening to it. They loved reggae, you know. They were trying to incorporate world music into what they were doing. They loved their funk. They loved their shoegazy tones.
Yeah.
They loved their Cure. You know, Navarro really was trying to build on a lot of Hendrix's chording techniques, you know, and like blending in more like new wave sounds. You know, that's there. Robert Christgau called them kitchen sink rock, and he said it like it was a bad thing. But what, you know, the people who went to those shows, they'll testify. Everyone would go to them.
Yeah.
It was an event that drew the metalheads and the ska kids and the punk rockers and the weirdos. And this is the fourth time I've been on here, and I've just been demanding that very thing from music every time. Grab everything you got, throw it in there. Jane's Addiction starts, well, for those 3 records, they did a phenomenal job, I thought. It was like, what was so cool about running into them as a kid at the top of the 90s was that I had a few years to catch up to Jane's Addiction. Mm-hmm. You know, and I had a few more years, in spite of like Porno for Pyros and all of that, to see Jane's Addiction kind of, they weren't going anywhere. They weren't doing anything. They were done. Right? But people still loved them all the same. And that was nice to see them abide. I think they screwed things up by coming back in 97.
So you mentioned Obvious as your favorite from that.
With probably 3 Days being second, you know. Okay. And Then She Did.
Okay.
I don't care for the last 2. It's like I don't care for Of Course much. It seems garish and stupid, and I'm pretty sure that's just like a heroin rolling track.
Probably
for him.
Probably. And
I don't know, man. Heroin by the Velvet Underground is awesome. I could go on all day. Heroin by the Velvet Underground. There's a great heroin song for you. This, not so much.
Well,
it just goes on and on.
When we were talking the other day, I had started to tell you, I think I didn't get through the whole record on my re-listen. I had only gotten partway through. And after a certain point, I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. And you were like, did you fall off after 3 days? And the answer to that is yes. I find the first half a little bit more to my liking than the last half of the record. Stop being probably my second favorite track. And because it's so nostalgic for me, Been Caught Stealin' is still one of my favorites. And that will go on playlists. You know, if I make playlists where, you know, I feel like it'll fit in, I'll throw that song on there. 3 Days is probably my third favorite track, and that's where the record loses me. And I get that some of these tracks were written about Perry Farrell's ex-girlfriend who died from a heroin overdose.
That was Lisa Chester. Casey, so the cover, this is why I don't like the cover of Ritual.
Okay.
The cover depicts Perry Farrell, Casey Nicole, and Lisa Chester hanging out for 3 days. Lisa Chester died in June of '87. She's buried at Bethel Memorial Park in Livonia, Wayne County, Michigan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. You don't want to wake the dead. You don't want to. He put it on the record cover, man. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, this is my life. And it's like, yeah, dude, that is your life. And it's kind of sad. I have not done much homework on this. And I've heard it come up before. More generally in while all this was going on, I mean, Jane's Addiction had broken up, but like Alternative Nation was just getting warmed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had a few friends in high school who were much smarter than me and were gracious enough to inform me of a few things. And one of them was a pretty hardline take on Alternative Nation being just a corporate sponsored cash grab. The other was a series of astute observations on the so-called Alternative Nation not really being much of an alternative and really just as old guard and regressive as anything they were hoping to replace.
Yeah.
And it was hard not to take what they were saying seriously. They both happened to be women. And yeah, that Lisa Chester was kind of used as a prop there, all things considered, was considered a lack of taste.
Well,
and that is not why anyone at Kmart objected to them being on the shelves. You know, all they saw was a pair of tits or 3 pairs of tits. However many tits are on that record.
I see 2 and then two side boobs.
Okay.
There's some crotch though on 2 of them.
Right.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of the thing is like, good art usually comes from a place of pain or, real emotions. So for me, it serves as like something for Perry to write about. However, the last half of the songs, I feel like when I was listening to it, it just kind of like droned from one song to another. Not drone's the wrong word, but like I talk about a lot. I love variety in a record. I love when, you can throw in a faster song, slower song, and you can pace your record. I like that. I like film. That's why I listen to records the way that I do, is a movement, fast, slow, all these emotions that they come in. And the first half of that record does that for me a bit. I mean, Been Caught Stealing doesn't sound like pretty much any of the other songs on the record, really. And then Stop is, that's a big one that I think probably a lot of people have heard before. I was really bummed that we didn't get to talk about Nothing Shocking, because my favorite Jane's Addiction songs are on there. Jane Says in the Mountain song are two of my two of my favorite Jane's Addiction songs. But I want to ask you about 3 Days, because 3 Days is a 10-minute long track, which I didn't know that going into it. I was listening, and I heard one song. I was like, "Oh, this!" It actually, the beginning of it reminds me of a Modest Mouse track. I think it's "All Alone Down There" or something. I think that's the track. Can't remember, but it like completely reminds me of one of the slower, Dramamine Modest Mouse tracks. And so I was like, oh wow, I wonder if, you know, I started thinking about Modest Mouse, and like a couple minutes later, I'm like full on into a whole nother song, and I was like, wow, this album jumps around a little bit here, right in the middle. And I looked down, it's the same song. I was like, this is a 10-minute song. So that's one of your favorites, yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's because a lot of their other this is based on listening. It seems to me like a lot of their songs are I don't want to say there's anything basic about them. These guys could play really well, okay? But see, at the time, man, they sounded a lot like other rock bands superficially. They were using the same gear, okay? Yeah. Slightly differently, but they were using the same gear. How they went about playing on them changed all of that. That was the amazing thing, okay? And not to reduce any Jane's Addiction song down to one thing, but often they're stoppy and starty, very rhythmic, percussive guitaring. They're driven. You got the stops and the starts. They're groovy, but they don't have many parts. And then along comes 3 Days, and I don't know, maybe there are like 3 main parts to it, but within that, I feel like there are 6 or 7 parts, but I think there are 3 main parts to 3 Days.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And especially back then, man, there were a lot of, I feel like I encountered a lot of modernish rock songs at the time that were longer than most others. And they'd stick out, you know, they'd turn up on the B side usually. I didn't care for the Chili Peppers much, but like Sir Psycho Sexy was something like that. Shinbone Alley, Hard to Exist by the Spin Doctors is another floated jam occupying the last third of the album.
Spin Doctors.
Woof. Echoes is kind of the granddaddy of that. Well, Adam Hartmother is sort of the grandmother. Adam Hartmother would be the grandmother, and Echoes the grandfather of that kind of thing. The thing is, with Jane's Addiction, man, I hadn't even gotten into Led Zeppelin at that point.
Yeah, same.
That was the next summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I had about another 8 years or so before I got into my Led Zeppelin phase. Well, hey, it's 7:05.
That sounds good, man.
Let's give some final thoughts here on Jane's Addiction, Ritual de lo Habitual. We have some songs that we both like. Yours is sorry, what was it again? Obvious and 3 Days.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Stop and Been Caught Stealing. 3 Days is my third on my list here. Any other final thoughts on this record here for you, Ryan?
It's nice that they have kind of come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're not an overbearing presence. They are one of, it's hard to think of them as a 90s band now because most of their work was done in the 80s, you know, but like
Fair
gradually
enough, yeah.
becoming aware of them, you know, and like their end, okay?
Yeah.
And kind of why they ended and just learning about them. I mean, that was kind of a formative rock experience. And there was a lot about that band that just, the absence of most macho bullshit, you know, they were not progressive. I don't think they treated it. They weren't a bunch of meatheads.
Yeah.
You know?
So
Terry Farrell was a romantic. And
Yeah.
and that I can't hate on that at the end of the day. However obnoxious it might get. You know, as a type it's not all bad.
So I think the other thing that I want to end here with is, do we recommend any other Jane's Addiction records? And I think the answers are sounding yes.
All of them. Well,
all of them.
The first three Jane's Addiction records are just about perfect.
Yes.
That's the thing. Those bands don't really do that anymore. And I feel like Jane's Addiction putting out more music cheapens their legacy. And they've been doing that for so long that it doesn't really matter. But that just tells you where my sensibilities are.
I don't think you're wrong. I think as especially a consumer, somebody, you know, a band that like has gone on multiple hiatuses where they come back after, 10 years or so, I feel like that kind of cheapens their legacy a little bit as well. I'm not hard on them really as a band, and not to get into politics or anything, but we'd mentioned in previous conversations where certain band members have gone with their political. I did look some of it up, and it's not as scary as I had assumed. We're not.
No.
I think I had made the oh my gosh. Speaking is not my thing today. I apologize. The comparison, there we go, of Dave Navarro maybe being along the lines of like a Ted Nugent in our conversation. I want to take that back.
Oh, that was a good one, man. I thought that was funny.
I want to take that back slightly because I don't think Dave Navarro's politics are nearly as toxic.
Shitty as Terry Farrell's?
Well, I just meant I meant in terms of Ted Nugent, but yeah, sure, let's go there. There's some stuff.
I don't think his politics are shit. I think if I wanted to be nice to Perry Farrell, I would say he's trying to show us the sunnier side of nihilism.
Sure.
You know? Yeah. And I'll give him that. That's fine. I don't want to mock him. I don't think he is the least bit sincere, but I do think he's probably trying to help the world in some, I don't know, festival-oriented way.
Yeah.
And that's cool, man.
I also don't want to mock anybody in this band either. I probably don't agree with them on some stuff politically, but you know what? That's just life. I have friends I don't agree with 100% politically, and that's okay. But you know, as far as I know, nobody in that band is as I mean, they're all older, of course. They were, prime. Their prime was in the late 80s, early 90s. So they are older, but they are not. God, for a lack of a better term, they're no boomers in that sense. But
gosh, are they though?
Well, I mean,
no.
no.
I'm sure they're Gen X-y enough, man.
Yeah,
they're Gen X-y enough.
I just mean, like, I don't know. I don't hear any of them being super overt about like really unhealthy political stances in life or anything like that.
I think so much they've made so many mistakes in public that I think they know better to judge. And
right.
when you are unwilling to do that, when you're I would like to think they've learned from their mistakes, and I would like to think they try to put others before themselves.
Right. And in regards to Perry Farrell, again, to make a Ted Nugent analogy, Ted Nugent can spew whatever politics he wants. Perry Farrell can do the same thing. I think the thing that works for me with like Perry Farrell, for example, is like, yeah, he may have a political agenda or not. I'm not trying to use these like trigger words or anything like that. He may have his opinions on things, but ultimately he puts them out in that kind of a sense. It still comes out musically because, Porno for Pyros and Jane's Addiction both still come back every once in a while. So he's still working on stuff, and he's also putting that into, the whole Lollapalooza thing is, I would rather, see another Lollapalooza than Ted Nugent talking about how to skin a deer. You know what I mean?
Well,
putting that energy somewhere that is helpful as opposed to just like, well, buy a gun, whatever.
Look, man, in retrospect, I think Perry Farrell looks kind of like a scumbag.
Sure.
You don't look good shooting dope with 14-year-olds.
That's fair.
That he has
totally
moved
fair.
beyond that is like cool, but he tried to sell that whole act with a straight face.
Yeah.
And
well,
there were some
Ryan,
lapses in judgment on his part, man, and I think he has recovered from that. I'm sure he's paid his dues. I'm not kicking Perry Farrell here necessarily.
Well, to play devil's advocate, it was the 90s.
There is that. Very much. Very much. And it was good to have that kind of exposure early on. It sort of inoculated me. Like, I never really got into many. I got into some pretty druggy bands, man.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And did Jane's Addiction help pave the way for that? Yeah, but they also kind of set the bar for like how much BS I would take from a front man.
Well, there's going to be some other bands somewhere along the lines here in our conversations in the coming weeks that I don't know, man. There's at the time for you, I'm sure that they set the bar, but I'm not trying to blow the load here because it's not next week. I don't want to talk about the next 2 weeks, but we will be doing a Butthole Surfer episode at some point and talk about a chaotic band. Well, hey, let's end it here. You say listen to all 3 Jane's Addiction records, the first 3. I say listen to also the first 3. Nothing Shocking is probably got some of my favorite stuff on there. Yeah, we're gonna keep doing a couple more of these episodes. And actually, I did write it down in our notes. I'm actually interested if we have the time, Ryan, maybe doing an extra episode about the whole parental advisory congressional hearing stuff that went down, because there was a lot musically that happened. I completely didn't realize that had happened in 1990. I figured it was like 88 or 89 or something like that. So that might be a good conversation to have.
Well, it's the other thing is it's like that is like that was a great period for hip hop.
Yeah.
and I'm not claiming to be hip hop's #1 fan or any kind of authority, but boy, it was getting good, and then it got better, and then it wouldn't stop getting better for a while. And anyway, 1990 was Two Live Crew was whack, man. But there were Public Enemy records, there were Digital Underground records. Naughty by Nature was about to come out. Stereo MCs were out. Oh man, there was just so much good hip hop. So much good hip hop. All over the place, And Jane's Addiction did make an impact. More rock bands followed, but I didn't like them that much. We touched on this before, man, but I don't particularly care for most 90s rock.
Yeah.
And I bristled at the term of modern rock when I was a kid.
Yeah. I bristle at the term new metal. I dodged that. I just dodged that bullet entirely. It was just a big joke to me from the start. Those were my high school years, man. I mean, all of the new metal bands. There was the rap rock and new metal stuff going on. There's Korn, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot. I even threw Tool in that category when I was younger, but that's because I was not the biggest metalhead. I'm not still the biggest metal. I do like metal to a degree.
I consider myself to be more of a metalhead than you are, man.
Probably.
And that's funny. That's funny. Kitchen sink rock for life, Jon B. Kitchen sink rock for life, Jon B.
All right, Ryan. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. I appreciate you being around.
I am grateful to be here, Jon B.
Anything else you want to say to the listeners before we take off for the week?
Kids, don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
Peace out, man.
Peace out. Have a good night, Ryan. I will talk to you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was Ryan. That was our weekly episode of Jon Does 90's Nostalgia. We'll be back next week with another episode. We got some stuff to talk about. I will be back Friday as well. I forgot. Pat might be around. I'm not sure. I'll double check. Double check with Pat to see if he wants to come on Friday if he can. What is going on here? My phone's doing dumb stuff. Anyways, I need to not pay attention to that. By the way, I did that software update on my phone. Was it Monday? Don't do it. Don't do the update. I've had the most problems with my phone. I mean, they're not terrible, but my background image on my phone does it gets super pixelated when there's an app open. Anyways, it's you don't want to hear me bitch about that. You don't care. You don't care about what I did to my phone. You're probably like, this idiot uses Apple and has to update stuff. Yeah, you're right. You know what? Fuck me for being a consumer. Thanks, capitalism. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back Friday. And we'll talk about stuff. There was some stuff that was there some stuff that happened? There was some stuff that happened. I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but we'll talk about it Friday if there's unless there's new stuff to talk about, and maybe we'll get Pat back on here. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk to Pat about what he's excited for in 2023 because there's a lot of stuff coming out this year. So anyways, don't forget to check out wilddinosaur.com. It's the best place to support the channel. What else is there? Oh yeah, well, the wilddinosaur.com has all kinds of stuff. T-shirts, sweatshirts, tote bags, socks, stickers, cool stuff. Check it out. purchase something, support the channel. Let me know what you think about it, by the way. The last thing I like to do is there's a link in the description below to donate to Planned Parenthood, because I believe Planned Parenthood does amazing things in our society. And I don't want to go off on a diatribe about why they're important, but I mean, they do a lot of healthcare, a lot of great healthcare, men and women, family planning, reproductive health and stuff like that. So check out PlannedParenthood.com, especially if you're, you know, younger and you feel alone and you don't understand certain parts of your anatomy. Planned Parenthood's a good place to start for information too. Anyways, I'll be back Friday, like I said, with this sweet mustache, which we didn't talk about at all today, which is fine. But yeah, me and the stash will be back on Friday. So yeah, have a wonderful evening, and I hope you get through your Thursday and Friday just fine. And we'll be back. Talk to you guys Friday night. Peace out.